Support for this podcast comes from St. Alphonsus Sports Medicine, offering services for sports injury and recovery, with physicians and athletic trainers who provide treatment for fractures, dislocations, sprains, strains, and other sports-related issues. More information on services at stalphonsus.org. So you can't see this, but hopefully you can hear it. Behind every Boise State Public Radio podcast is a team working hard to bring you stories that matter. So if you value podcasts like this one, please support them. Hit donate at boisestatepublicradio.org. Thanks.
It's the Connector Idaho Daily News from Boise State Public Radio. Happy Tuesday, May 5th. I'm Troy Oppie. Here's what we're following this morning. An emergency water conservation order in McCall has been lifted. Unemployment in Idaho in March ticked down 0.1 of 1 point to 3.6%. And the University of Idaho gets the largest federal grant in school history reinstated for more research on climate-resilient farming. First up this morning, state officials want public input on how Idaho should prioritize spending opioid settlement funds for the upcoming fiscal year. Here's James Dawson with more.
Past priorities have included prevention programs, treatment, and recovery, along with workforce development. Ross Edmonds, who co-chairs the Idaho Behavioral Health Council, says a ruling from the state attorney general's office requires them to only use the funds for opioid-related projects.
There certainly have been requests for programming that is across substance use disorders, but we've really tried to limit this and say this is specifically and focused exclusively on opioids.
Idaho has received about $73 million so far from pharmaceutical companies accused of fueling the country's opioid crisis. State and local governments each receive 40% of those funds, while public health districts are given the remaining 20%. Residents have until June 5th to submit their feedback to the council. Edmonds says the group hopes to vote on recommendations later that month. State legislators will have the final say on how to spend the money during the upcoming session next January. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
Downwinder compensation groups in Boise last weekend drew more than 800 people to events offering help filing for government benefits. The Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, RECA, was expanded in last year's One Big Beautiful Bill Act to include Idaho residents as eligible for compensation for illness caused by fallout from U.S. weapons testing in the West and Southwest during and after World War II. Affected residents may apply for a one-time $100,000 payment prior to December 31st next year. Advocacy groups are hosting free workshops to help people apply for the benefit. They say previous events have been at capacity, proving the need for the program in Idaho. Additional workshops sponsored by the Idaho Downwinders are coming up at the Payette Apple Blossom Festival May 14th and 15th and in Pocatello next month. An emergency water conservation order in McCall was lifted late Monday. The city says a broken pipe at its water treatment facility Wednesday last week limited how much wastewater could be treated, and while some capacity was restored within 24 hours, other remaining issues required the emergency conservation order to remain in place. Non-essential use of water, like irrigation, was prohibited until 5 p.m. Monday. The city, in its update lifting the emergency order, thanked residents for doing their part to reduce water consumption the last 5 days, but also reminded residents that alternate day irrigation watering rules remain in effect in McCall. President Donald Trump is allowing the U.S. Air Force to pollute rivers and lakes in Oregon, Idaho, and Nevada in order to let pilots train in combat jets over the Owyhee Desert. From Oregon Public Broadcasting, April Ehrlich has more.
President Donald Trump has declared the military's supersonic flights are in the paramount interest of the country, even if they pollute rivers and threaten fish. He didn't explain why this training is important, but his declaration comes 2 months into the war that the U.S. and Israel launched against Iran. Air Force jets have been flying at the speed of sound over the Owyhee Desert, causing thunderous booms. These fighter jets also drop flares and clouds of aluminum-coated fibers called chaff, which can throw off missiles. 3 years ago, environmental groups sued the Air Force, saying its flares and chaff release toxic metals that harm native fish. Trump's declaration allows the flights to continue over this high desert, even if the jets violate federal and local water pollution laws. Few other presidents have made similar water pollution exemptions in the name of national interest. I'm April Ehrlich, reporting.
Boise State University will rename Cesar Chavez Lane on campus in the wake of significant sexual assault allegations made against the famed labor leader earlier this year. Chavez died decades ago, but a report in the New York Times detailed years of abuse against girls and women in his orbit, including the co-leader of the United Farm Workers, Dolores Huerta. That reporting has led many entities across the country to revisit decisions establishing monuments or naming public spaces in honor of Chavez. Boise State says about 2,500 students, faculty, and staff responded to a survey, the majority supporting renaming the road, which runs along the north edge of campus against the Boise River. 3 new names will be considered: Friendship Lane, Peregrine Lane, or a return to the road's original name, Campus Lane, before it was changed to honor Chavez nearly 20 years ago. Those 3 names will be submitted to the county and then the city of Boise for vetting, a process expected to take as long as 6 weeks, according to a university news release. The largest grant in University of Idaho history, $59 million for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences to study climate-resilient farming practices, has been reinstated after the Trump administration pulled it last year. The Idaho Capital Sun reports the feds notified U of I last month that the school and its partners, the Nature Conservancy, Desert Mountain Grass-Fed Beef, and the Nez Perce and Coeur d'Alene tribes, could resume work on the 5-year program. More than 200 Idaho farmers from 34 counties had applied to participate before the grant funding was withheld. Program managers told the Capital Sun they hope to go back to many of those same farmers and get them on board this year before potentially reopening the application process. Program managers say they're focused on reducing risk for farmers by using more organic nutrient sources and different field practices to improve soil carbon storage, water retention, and more. Unemployment in Idaho in March ticked down 0.1 point to 3.6%. That's according to the State Department of Labor. Fewer people were unemployed in March compared to February, but the state's labor force, the labor force participation rate, and total employment shrunk slightly as well. The numbers were slightly different for non-farm jobs in Idaho's 6 major urban areas, which all saw growth in employment from February to March, and nearly 5,000 more jobs in those areas compared to March of 2025. April's data will be released in 3 weeks, according to the Department of Labor. It is graduation season. Boise State will celebrate the first of its 4 graduation ceremonies this Friday at 3 p.m., awarding graduate, college, and doctoral degrees. 3 ceremonies follow on Saturday, starting at 9 a.m. All are happening inside Extra Mile Arena. In all, 3,403 students who finished their coursework this semester are eligible for just over 4,400 degrees and certificates. And that's your Connector on this Tuesday morning. To stay in touch with the news whenever you'd like, visit our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. Download and use our free app for your smartphone or follow us on social media. Search Boise State Public Radio on Nextdoor, on Facebook, on Instagram too. And we'll catch you right back here again tomorrow for another episode of The Connector. I'm Troy Oppie. Make it a great day.
You know, every day on Up First, NPR's Golden Globe-nominated morning news podcast, we bring you 3 essential stories. At the heart of each story are questions. What really happened? What really mattered? What happens next? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious and to follow the facts. Follow Up First wherever you get your podcasts and start your day knowing what matters and why.